I will show you how to use the collectibles in your inventory and give them to a chest in your game to receive rewards. So head over to Scenes, Objects, and let's create a new folder in our Objects folder and call this Chest. Click OK, and then create a new 2D scene, rename this and call this Chest. Then save our scene and go to the Scenes folder, Objects, Chest, and save that scene. Then right click Add Child Node and choose Animated Sprite 2D and create that node. Then head down to Sprite Frames property, click Empty and create new sprite frames and then open the sprite frames. Then rename this animation to Chest Open and then click Add Frames. Go to Assets and then Game folder, Objects, and choose the chest PNG and click Open. Then set horizontal to 5 and vertical to 2. And then choose the sprites in this order, and then add those 5 frames. Then create a new animation and call this Chest Close. Click Add Frames, pick Chest PNG and click Open, and then zoom in and then choose the frames in this order and add those 5 frames. Let's just zoom in on our sprites and let's play that. So let's turn looping off and then go to Chest Close and turn looping off as well. Let's add another animation. And we will call this Default. Click Add Frames, choose Chest, click Open, zoom in and just choose this single frame here, and then click Auto Load. So when the scene is added to our scene tree, this is the sprite that will be displayed, and turn looping off as it's just a single sprite. Then head back to Scenes folder and Components, and then scroll down and add our interactable component to the chest. Then add a child to the interactable component and choose Collision Shape 2D. And for shape, choose New Circle Shape and just make this a little bit wider so when the player interacts with this collision shape, we'll then show the interactable label. Then also back in the Components folder, get the interactable label component and also add that to our scene. And then let's just move that and just position that roughly about here, and then open the interactable label component scene. Just choose the root node and scroll down, and in Z-index, increase this to 2. And we just want to make sure that when the label displays, it overlays all of the other objects in our scene. Then back in Chest, right click and add another child node and search for marker and add a marker 2D and create that. Then for position, just grab the marker and just position it on the edge here. So this is where we will output the rewards when we add items to our chest. And we will create a circle around this marker position where the items will randomly be output. Now let's create a feed component. So go to Scene, New Scene, choose Other Node and search for Area 2D and create that. Then F2 and call this Feed Component and click Save and go into Scenes, Components and save the scene here. Then right click, choose Attach Script and create it as Feed Component Script and create that. Then scroll down and for the collision layer for Feed Component, in the Layer Properties, just open this and choose Object and then just turn off Ground. And for Mask, we need to add a new item. So go to Edit Layer Names. And for Layer 8, we will call the layer Food and close that. And then select Option 8 for the mask. And then in the Feed Component script, put class name, Feed Component, then Signal, and pass in the area which is type Area 2D. Then back on Feed Component, in the inspector, choose the Node tab, and then select the area entered signal, and then click Connect, and then connect that signal. And then in that method, call Food Received, and then emit area. So that's complete, so head back to chest, and then get the feed component and add it to our chest. Go back to 2D view, and then right click, Add Child, and search for Collision Shape 2D, and create that. And then for the shape, choose Circle Shape, and then let's just change the colour, and we can leave the size as it is. So right click on chest, and choose Attach Script, and save this as chess script and click create. So our first parameter is for balloon scene equals preload and choose game dialog balloon scene, then variable corn harvest scene and choose the corn harvest scene here, then preload the tomato harvest scene. Then let's add an export variable, which is dialog start command, which is type string, then export food drop height with a default value of 40, then export reward output radius with a default value of 20, and then export output reward scenes, which is an array of packed scene. Then click and drag the interactable component and then hold Control and then add the interactable component as an onReady variable. Do the same for animated sprite 2D, also for feed component. Then click marker 2D and just rename this to reward marker, and then click and drag and add this as an onReady variable, and then get the interactable label component and add this as an onReady variable too. Then add variable in range, which is a bool, and then variable is chest open, which is also a bool as well. And then let's begin by creating a function and overriding the ready method. Let's grab the interactable component and register the signal interactable activated. So connect that. So let's say function on interactable activated and just return void for now. And then copy that method in our connect function here. And then when the player walks into the interactable area, we want to just say interactable label component and then show. And then we want to say the player is in range of the interactable area and just set that to true. So get the interactable component again and register the interactable deactivated signal. Let's connect that and say function on interactable deactivated and return void. And in this method, say interactable label component and then hide that, and then say in range equals false, and then just add the method to our connect function. Then back in the ready method, let's just hide our interactable label component when the scene loads. So let's create a test scene for our chest, go to scenes, test folder, and let's just open the test scene collectibles, and let's duplicate this scene and call it test scene objects and chest and duplicate that. Let's close that scene and open the test scene objects chest. Then in this scene, let's just rename that to test scene objects chest, and then delete these nodes here, and then go to scene UI and just attach the game screen and then save that scene. Then back in scenes objects and chest folder, let's just drag a chest onto our scene here, and then let's run the current scene. And with the player, let's approach the chest. So we get our notification icon here and press E on the keyboard, and nothing's happening because we need to register our event. Let's just close that. So head back over to chest, and in the chest script, scroll down and override the unhandled input event. Then say if in range, then if event.isAction pressed, and then choose show dialog, then get the interactable label component and hide that first. Then grab the animated sprite 2D and play the chest open animation. Then get the isChestOpen parameter and set that to true. Then we will create some dialog for the chest. Here, let's just test that. Let's go to test scene objects and chest, and let's just run our test scene. So press E on the keyboard and the chest opens. Let's move away from the chest, and the chest is not closing. So let's close the window and fix that. So back in on interactable deactivated, we should say if chest is open, then play the chest close animation. Then we can set is chest open back to false, and then hide our label component and then set the in range back to false. Let's test the scene. So approach the chest, press E, and the chest opens, and let's move away from the chest, and it now closes. So when we interact with the chest, let's show a dialog balloon and then communicate with the chest. So go back to unhandled import and say var balloon, which is type base game dialog balloon, and then get the balloon scene from here and then instantiate that. Then get tree and the current scene and add child and then pass in our balloon instance. Then call balloon.start and then we'll load some dialog script here and then pass in the parameter dialog start command, and we've declared that parameter here. So for this dialog script, I'm going to do something a little different, because when we place the chess on our game, we can have multiple chests. So I'm going to create 2 pasture boxes, one for the cows and one for the chickens. So when the dialog starts, we want slightly different dialog. Let's just scroll back down to here and let's start to create a script file which will work with this. So head up to the dialog folder and then select the conversations folder and then choose the dialog option here at the top and click new here. Then open dialog and conversations to save our file here and call it chest and click OK. So I'm just going to remove this default dialog from here, and then to start this section of dialog, I will call this start cow pasture box. Then I'll use pasture box and then open square brackets again, and use these 3 tokens, hi, hello, and howdy, which are chosen at random every time the dialog loads. And then say your animals are hungry. Then pasture box again, and then ask the question, would you like to feed your cows? And then let's create those options. So if the player chooses yes, then Marlowe will respond, yeah, let's feed my cows. And then we can say no, and Marlowe will respond, no, I don't need to feed them, I have enough milk. So that's just a simple dialogue for the chest. And when the player presses yes, we will call a function here to perform some actions in our game. Now select all of the dialogue and copy it, and then paste it again. And this time we'll make some modifications for the chicken pasture box. So we'll call it start chicken pasture box. We can keep the first line and then just change this to say chickens. And then for the yes option, we can say, yeah, let's feed my chickens. And then for the no option, no, I don't need to feed them. I have enough eggs. So now this is complete. Let's go back to our chess scene and open the chess script. And in the balloon.start function, we can now load our script. So choose the chess.dialog script, and then let's head over to our test scene. Go to the 2D view and let's just scroll in. Let's just reposition this chest here, and then go back to scenes, objects and chest folder and drag another chest onto our scene. Let's just rename these to cow pasture box and then chicken pasture box. Then we need to set the dialog start command. Go back to dialog, and the start command is this here. So for the cow pasture box, just copy that and set that here. Go back to the dialog script and get the start command for chicken pasture box. Then click on the node and let's just set the command here too. Now let's run the test scene. So let's approach this chest here and press the E key. So we can now see the balloon for this. And as we go through the dialogue, let's just say yes for this. So would you like to feed your cows? Yes. Yeah, let's feed my cows. And then press the space bar. Let's just test that the dialogue is different for this pasture box. So howdy, your animals are hungry. Would you like to feed your chickens? Say yes. And then let's feed my chickens. So that is now working. What we now need to do is for the player to collect the harvest collectibles and then give them to the pasture box, and that will then feed the animals. So go back to dialogue, and we need to add an action after the yes option. So if we have a look at what we have done for guide, we've got the game dialog manager and an action here. So let's go to scripts, globals, and then game dialog manager, and then create a new signal called feed the animals, and then create another function which is action feed animals, and then call that signal and emit. Then head back to dialog, and in the chest dialog, in the yes option, write do game dialog manager dot action feed animals, and in the start chicken pasture box dialog, in the yes option, let's do the same. Then head back to chest and open the chest script, and in the ready function, get the game dialog manager and the signal feed the animals, and then let's connect that. Let's just scroll down, and after the unhandled input event, create a new function called onFeed the animals, and the return type is void. Then scroll up and add that to our connect function. Then scroll back down to onFeed the animals method and say if in range and pass, and then let's just create another function called trigger feed harvest, and we'll pass in the inventory item and a scene. So back at the top of the script, we are preloading the harvest scene and the tomato harvest scene. So we just scroll back down to onFeed the animals. We can then call this method, and for the first parameter set this to corn, and then corn harvest scene. Then back in trigger feed harvest method, let's first get hold of the inventory, then say if the inventory does not have the item, then just return from this method. And if it does have the item, let's carry on with the function. So then let's get the inventory item count for that specific inventory item type, and then create a for loop. And we can say for index in inventory item count, then create another variable, which is our harvest instance, equals the scene, which we are passing into the function, instantiate the scene as node2d. Then harvest instance dot global position equals vector2, which is the global position of the chest dot x, global position of the chest again dot y, minus the food drop height, which we have declared again at the top here. Then say get tree dot root dot add child, and then pass in the harvest instance. Then create another variable called target position equals the global position. Then another variable called time delay equals, and then call the randf range function. And for the first parameter, set this to 0.5, and the second parameter is 2.0. Then call await and get tree dot create a timer, pass in the time delay variable dot timeout signal, and now we are going to create a tween. So say for tween equals get tree dot create tween, then say tween dot tween property and pass in the harvest instance, and the first property to interpolate will be position, and then pass in target position, and the duration is 1. Then tween dot tween property again, then harvest instance, then the property scale, then use vector2, and we'll say 0.5, 0.5 for a duration of 1 second. And then tween dot tween callback, harvest instance dot q3, but take off the parentheses here, and then that will q3 our node from the scene. So the tween here will interpolate these values one after another. So they are not called in parallel. We are calling these actions sequentially. And now we need to remove an item from the inventory. So go back to scripts and globals and open the inventory manager script. And let's add a new function called remove collectible and pass in the collectible name, and the return type is void. Then copy and paste this code here in the add collectible function and just paste that here. And then just change these values. So we want to say 0 for this one. And instead of plus equals 1, we want to say minus equals 1 to deduct it from the inventory. And then just click after the else statement and add another if statement here, and then tab that in. So as long as we still have items in the inventory, then we can remove the item. Let's just save that. Then just go back to the chest script and then call inventory manager dot remove collectible and then pass in inventory item. So we're now ready to test the scene. So head to the test scene objects chest scene and go to 2D view. And now I'm going to add some scenes to our test scene. So to test the pasture bots, I've just added the harvest collectibles directly to the scene. I am not worried about the interaction with the tile map to create the till dirt tile and then grow the crop, because the output is just the harvest collectible and then adding that into our pasture bot. So let's run this current scene and I will collect these first. So the crops have grown and the output is this harvest. So we have 2 corn and 2 tomato. Let's just approach the box, press the E key and go through the dialogue and choose yes. Now when I press the spacebar now, let's just see the animation with the tween. So we've got the corn, the tween is now performing and it is gone through the position of the tween, then the scale and then Q freed. So let's move away from the pasture box and let's do this again. Let's press the E key. So we've got 2 corn here. Let's press the space bar, say yes, and the animation is working, and then the scale and Q3. And then if you check the inventory, it's gone from 2 back to 0. So let's just add the update for our tomato. But when we feed the pasture bots, let's output milk for the cow pasture bots and then eggs for the chicken pasture bots. Let's close that. So head back to the chess scene and open the chess script. And to solve the issue with adding tomatoes, in the onFeed the animals method, use function trigger feed harvest with the string tomato and then pass in the tomato harvest scene, which has been declared at the top of the script. Now let's head to the 2D view for the chest. And when we feed the harvest items to the chest, they start about here and then they'll drop down into the chest, and we need to interact with our feed component and this collision here. So let's go back to the chest script, and at the top of the script in the ready method, after we connect onFeed the animals, get our feed component, then get the food received signal and connect that. So let's scroll down and at the bottom let's create another method called onFoodReceived and pass in the area and return type void. Then scroll up to the top and register that method in the feed component signal here. Then scroll back down and just say pass here for now, and then create a function called add reward scene and just put pass there. Then back in onFoodReceived, use call deferred, then add reward scene. Say for scene in output reward scenes, then say var reward scene is a type node2d equals scene dot instantiate. And then on this line, we need to calculate the random position for our award. Let's create another method, which is function get random position in circle, and we'll pass in the center point and a radius for the circle. Then say var angle equals randa function multiplied by tau, which is 2 times pi. Then var distance from center equals, and then use the square root function and then pass in the rand f function and multiply that by the radius we are passing in. Then say var x, which is an integer, equals, and then get the center point and the x of that. Then add the random distance from the center, which we've just calculated, and then use cosine and pass in angle here. Then var y is integer equals center dot y plus the distance from center, which is again random, and then cosine and angle. Then let's put these 2 variables together and create a vector 2i and just pass in x and y and return that. Then back in the add reward scene function, say var reward position, which is type vector 2 equals get random position in circle, then grab the reward marker, which is here, get the global position of that and pass in the reward output radius, Then get the reward scene and set the global position to be the reward position. Then get tree and get the root and then add the child and pass in the reward scene. So this is why we're using call deferred to make sure that the scene is added in the idle time. So now head back over to the test scene and choose the cal pasture box and go to the 2D view. And we now have a parameter in here called output reward scenes. So just click that and then click add elements, then go to objects, and in there we have the milk scene. So add the milk scene to the cow pasture box. So when we then get the rewards, it will output the milk scene. Let's now click the chicken pasture box. And then for output reward scenes, just click that and add element, and then add the egg scene. Now click back on the chest scene and go to feed component and just check the collision layers. So we said that the collision layer that it's on is object and it's looking for food items. So head back over to scenes and objects, and in the plants folder, open the corn harvest scene and open the tomato harvest scene. Let's just click on collectible component and let's check the inspector. So the collectible component is an area and is on the collectible layer. Now we can still modify the collectible component just for the corn harvest. So don't open the scene and add the modification inside it, as it affects everything that collectible component is attached to. However, we are using these default values, but for this specific scene, we can also add a supplement value. So let's just put it on the food collision here and save that. Then open tomato harvest and do the exact same here. So go to collision and layer and choose number 8 for food, and then go back to chest because the feed component is listening for items that are on the food layer. Now let's go to the test scene and let's run our test scene. So I'll let the player collect these harvest items and then approach the cow pasture box, press the E key, and then enter to pass through the dialog text, and then click yes. And we've still got 2 corn and 2 tomato. Then the harvest falls into the pasture box, and then we can collect the milk items. And the milk items are now in the inventory. So let's now collect the harvest here and add this to the chicken box. So in this pasture box, let's go and say yes, and then feed the chickens. Now let's collect these eggs. And this has also updated the inventory. Let's close the window. So back on the test scene objects chest, let's just zoom out and let's just make a modification to the emotes panel so that when we collect the items, we show another animation here. So I'll go to UI, open the emotes panel and then the emotes panel script, then get the inventory manager and say inventory change and then connect that method. Then the first function is on inventory change and just pass that into the connect method. Then say animated sprite 2D and then play the emote 7 excited animation. Then get the game dialog manager and register to the feed animals signal and then use connect. Then create a function on feed animals and then play the animation emote 6 love kiss. Then copy on feed the animals and paste that into the connect method. So click the test scenes objects chest scene, go to 2D view and run this current scene. And then let's just look at the animation here. So let's just pick up our first collectible and the animation now changes. Let's do the next one and the last one. And then let's feed the chest and say yes. And then we get the love kiss animation. Let's just close that window. And then let's head back over to the scenes, objects and chest folder and open the chest scene. Then right click the chest node and change type and search for static body 2D and change that type. Then right click, add a child node and search for collision shape and then create that. Just drag the collision shape to be below the chest. Then for the shape property, choose new rectangle shape 2D and zoom in and then just cover the chest sprite. Then click the collision shape under the interactable component and just change that colour to distinguish it from the collision shape on the chest. Then click the chest and we'll leave it on collision layer 1. And this will just prevent our player from walking through the chest. Now let's go back to the test scene and just run our current scene, and the player cannot walk through the chest. And that brings us to the end of this tutorial on how to create some custom pasture boxes to help feed the animals. When you collect the collectibles, you can then put them into the pasture box and modify your inventory and then output some rewards. If you like what you've seen in this tutorial, please remember to hit like and subscribe to receive future updates of my other tutorials. Thank you for watching.